Simon and the Collective, I approach you seeking forgiveness for a web of deception I wove some 10 years ago now. I've always had a liking for the Dorset countryside. This was born of several family holidays taken there during my childhood. In 2001, my wife and I were living in a Hertfordshire town with our two children, 5 and 7. My wife grew up there, and her side of the family are from all around Hertfordshire. I'd previously raised the point that if the opportunity arose, we should escape from the home counties for more rural climes, but she was having none of it. Owing to the fact that she'd always lived there, that was where she called home, and that was where she was staying. Besides which, our two children were nicely settled at school. I was naturally disappointed at this response, but kept my feelings to myself, while pondering over whether there was going to be any way to make a move and still keep the family together. However, time went on, and the idea of moving was forgotten about. We were happy. I make my living, Simon, as a freelance software engineer, and in 2002 started a new contract in a large Berkshire town. It was then that I began to weave my dastardly web of deceit for which I now seek your forgiveness. Whilst working in Berkshire, I met James. James told me that he was soon to be starting up a new company on the Dorset coast, and that he would be looking for an experienced software engineer, and would I be interested? Well, I told him that I was very excited by the idea, but that my wife had no wish to move from our home in Hertfordshire. However, I would see if there was any possibility of talking her round. Well, that weekend I mentioned it to my wife, emphasising that this was the career opportunity of a lifetime, and that I would never be able to forgive myself if I turned it down. I even told her that if she still refused to move, our marriage would become a weekends and holidays arrangement. Suffice to say that after much emotional debate, she reluctantly agreed to the idea of a move. Our house was duly put on the market, and the search began in earnest for a property in Dorset. Eventually we settled on a house, and arrangements were made for the children to start at a new school. I left my contract in Berkshire and began working for the new company in Dorset. I had only been there for a week, however, when James, now my new boss, gave me the devastating news that the new venture was no longer viable, as our first and only customer had pulled out, so the new company would not be able to carry on trading as planned. That evening, I broke the news as gently as I could to my wife. She was obviously devastated, and we spent quite a few evenings discussing what the future might hold, all the time trying to keep it from the kids. What I didn't tell her, or the children, however, is that I had made the whole thing up.
What? Derek!
James didn't exist, and I was never offered a job in Dorset. The week that I claimed to be working for James, I spent sitting in cafes, reading papers and going for walks on Dorset's beautiful Jurassic coastline. The whole thing was a ruse to persuade my wife to agree to move the family. The episode proved to be of little financial hardship, as I simply went back to contracting as I had been doing previously, but at least we now had a lovely new home in the heart of the Dorset countryside. I knew it would be a jaw dropper.
Unbelievable.
10 years on, says Derek, we're still married, still living in Dorset, and I'm still contracting. Our oldest is now 17 and doing A-levels, while our youngest is doing GCSEs. Neither my wife nor children are any of the wiser.
What?
To this day. I did what I did in order to live in the place I love with the ones that I love, but after all these years, I can hold it in no longer. So I now beg forgiveness.
In the doghouse.
We were still doing the TV programme, that we would so have the family ready to do this. So I now beg forgiveness from my wife for the upheaval and the little white lies from my two children, even though they seem to have been happy enough living in Dorset, and of course the collective. Yours, with humble penitence and humility. And as soon as I got to the bit where he said, what I didn't tell her is that I'd made the whole thing up, I thought, yep, absolutely. My guess is, Derek, no chance of forgiveness. Not just from the guys here, which I think is the least of your troubles. But let's see what we get here from Sister Stephanie.
That is absolutely shocking, that. I mean, it sounds like things have worked out in the end, but that's just terrible to do such a lie like that.
As
and
lies
to go
go,
and hang out
it's
in
up
a
there, isn't
cafe
it?
Yeah. I just think that's outrageous, personally. And if that was my husband, I'd be showing him the door.
This could be a Jeremy Kyle, couldn't it? It would be. Yeah. He told me that he was meeting James, but he was lying. Mother Superior.
Oh, Derek. I don't know what to say to this one, really, because actually they're all happy now, I guess. They're living in a lovely part of the world. I mean, who wouldn't want to move to Dorset? But actually to kind of fundamentally undermine your marriage and your family life in that way is pretty awful. So I'm kind of torn, because I think you've ended up where you probably should have always been, but the deception you used to get to that point, I think, is unforgivable. Yeah. So I don't think I can forgive you, although I'm teetering. I know I can't forgive you. Sorry, I can't forgive you.
I mean, if you forgive this lie, you're going to be forgiving almost anything else.
Absolutely, it undermines everything. Yeah, so you can't. I can't forgive you.
Here we go then with Brother Matthew.
I think this is amazing. This is true, jaw-dropping. I could not believe that he'd do that. However, it was a gamble, and it paid off. I mean, they're still together. You know, if the marriage had failed and all
tonight.
That, then exactly.
She doesn't know he lied.
It's amazing.
So it might be in the balance.
I tell you what, the flack he's going to get tonight. I'm going to forgive him just because he's going to get an enormous amount of flack from his wife and his kids. So the one silver lining is that I forgive him, which is no silver lining at all.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
is superb.